Procorre's Next10 initiative is looking at future trends that may impact on contractors over the next coming 10 years. This is impacted immediately by the changes to IR35 legislation due in April 2020. IR35 originally came out in the year 2000 and has had some success, I guess, in the eyes of the HMRC. However, they decided to up the off-payroll rules. Really, this is to protect people who are at the bottom end of the scale, who are perhaps being exploited by the regulations and becoming contractors when really they should be employees and be given the benefits and the security of employees. However, there is a sector of contractors who are at the top end who chose to be contractors for a reason, and they want to maintain their contractor status, and it's very important to them. So Procorre is looking to help them to do that, and we have therefore interviewed 500 HR professionals and 500 contractors to get their views and see how they are going to deal with the changes that they're being faced with in April 2020.
Okay, so if we have a look at the survey results then of our survey of 500 consultants and 500 HR professionals, we found that 57% of contractors work on, they have one sole client at a time. Is that a red flag?
It's open to interpretation, as most things in the law are. I would say that 6 months is a normal amount of time for a contractor to be on a project. It can go to 12 months. Once it gets beyond 2 years, then I think it is a bit of a red flag, and we need to make sure that that is covered off correctly.
Okay, so what about things like basing yourself out of your clients' offices? So, you know, we found that 24% of contractors base themselves out there at a time. So is that bad?
Well, it depends again on the project and the requirements. If you need to manage indoor staff, then it's likely that you would need to be on site. We do hope that contractors can have the flexibility to work in or outside of the premises, but sometimes it will just be necessary. Otherwise, the project just won't be delivered and won't get done.
Okay, so what about, you know, smaller things like using a client's email address domain? We found that 3/4 of contractors do, or things like using equipment, using laptops that belong to the client. Is that also a red flag too?
I mean, the off payroll rules do seem to suggest that they should be using their own equipment and they should be using their own email addresses. However, clients will have security concerns as to why they want their domain used, why they want their equipment used. As long as that is covered off in the contract sufficiently, then that should be okay. You've got to be, as I said, it's open to interpretation. You've got to be flexible, but you've got to also ensure that you can back up why you're doing something.
Okay, so if we have a look at some of the results from the HR professional survey now, we found that nearly half said that they're now drowning in paperwork ahead of the IR35 changes next year. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me. The reason why is because the actual responsibility now sits with the client, and that is going to create an awful lot more work. And they need to decide whether a contractor and a role, in fact, can sit outside or inside of IR35. And I think that they will be worried about the challenge that brings and also the consequences of a mistake. What we've got to try and do is allow our contractors to maintain their contractor status. And the only way we can do that is to give HR as much information and as much justification for why they should be outside as rather than inside.
Okay. 33% strongly agreed that once IR35 comes into force, it's going to negatively affect their ability to be agile. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, agility is down to speed, it's down to delivery, And these rules are just going to make it more cumbersome. It's just going to become more difficult to react to things quickly, because you've got a whole raft of decisions that you're going to have to make. What you need to ensure is that you have what I would call a career contractor. A career contractor knows the rules, knows how he needs to behave, knows what he needs to do. He's paid a high day rate, and those kind of individuals should not cause you a problem. These rules, if we're honest, were put into place in 2000 to protect people who are being exploited, put onto a contract rate when really they were an employee. When you go to the top end of the scale, it's very important that that flexibility remains and that people are allowed to work within the legislation to allow contractors to be able to do a role within the business and maintain their contractor status.
So it's good that we found that the majority of HR professionals are seeking help or advice from third parties. I guess what's a concern is that we found that 32% are still intending to seek advice or haven't done so yet. What would you say to them?
They need to seek advice. They need to seek advice as independently as possible. This is a new set of rules. The best people to decipher a new set of rules are legal people. They can work through the text, they can work through the loopholes, they can see what can and cannot be done. Secondly would be accountants, but it's a specialist area, so they would need to be specialists. Consultancies like ourselves could potentially help, depending on how they're approaching it. We're approaching it very pragmatically with a questionnaire, with a pack that we will be quite firm. If people are not sitting outside IR35, we will tell them why and we will tell them the reasons. Some we will be able to take remedial actions with and we'll be able to put it right for them and the client. Others we will not, and they will have to go PAYE. That's just the facts of where we are.
So what do you think is going to be the knock-on effect? So I can see here that over half HR professionals think that contractors are going to increase their rates. Do you think that's likely to happen?
If they're allowed to maintain their contractor status and stay within outside of IR35 and within the rules, then they will be happy to do that and continue on their current rates. If they're forced to become PAYE, then they will want more money because they will have to pay more tax. It's as simple as that. So the costs for the client will escalate.
Okay, and there's also some concern here around being able to recruit the necessary skills. Their organisation, 66% think that it'll be hard to recruit necessary skills. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. If you contract the talent pool that you have to work from, because people will go abroad because they'll want to maintain their contractor status and to enable them to do that and continue to earn the good money that they earn, they will probably look to go and work in Europe or in the UAE or wherever. And that will reduce the talent pool of experienced SMEs that you have here in the UK, which I think are vital to our economy. So I think that we need to really ensure that these rules are followed, but they are followed in a pragmatic way that allows people to make the right decisions regarding a contractor's status.
And what's Procorre's position on this then? What do you have a solution? What would be your main piece of advice, your main takeaway for someone?
Okay, well what I would say is there's no silver bullet to IR35. So we cannot legislate for that. However, what we can do is mitigate the risks. And we will mitigate those risks by people completing our questionnaire, going through our pack, putting in place remedial actions to the contract that are necessary, and adhering to our advice. Also, they can work as a consultant from Procorre, i.e. Procorre runs the contract, Procorre manages the people, and therefore has full right of substitution. And that is another way that a contractor continue to work through his own limited company, but work with a consultancy on a project.